What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Brave and Faithful. Today, I have a Marine and also the founder and CEO of Claymore Vets, a nonprofit organization that's cultivating a creative and connected community of veterans and first responders, along with artists through clay and arts. Maria Salazar. How you doing, Maria?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, no worries. Before we start talking about Claymore Vets and what you're doing with that, can you just share with our audience a little bit about your military backgrounds serving in the Marine Corps?
Yeah, so I joined the Marine Corps right after 9/11. I actually joined the Marine Corps because of 9/11. Um, I I came from Peru. I was born in Peru. At the time when the terrorism was really bad. And so when 9/11 happened, it kind of triggered something for me. And so I decided to join. I got deployed to Iraq in '03. I served with 6 Motor Transfer Battalion. So I joined 2002 and I stayed till 2011. I was a logistics specialist. What else? Yeah, I think that pretty much sums up my military career.
Yeah. How long were you in the States? You said you grew up in Peru, right? That's where you were from.
Yeah, so I came here when I was 12.
Okay. And
Yeah,
then by that time, how old were you when
when I joined,
9/11 happened?
um, 21.
Okay. And you mentioned also Peru, as far as like there's been also terrorism there as well, and then that kind of led you to joining and signing up with the Marine Corps.
Yeah, so like back in the 90s, um, Peru was there was a civil there were two separate terrorist groups that were fighting each other and fighting the government.
Hmm.
But one of them was very, very sadistic. Like they would have like car bombs in like hospitals, and they would have take out hit list of like the police officers, the military, like the generals and stuff like that. So and my dad was um like the equivalent of the FBI here in Peru. And so it got to the point where there were like threats on his life, on our lives, to like kidnap us and stuff like that. So we ended up moving here.
Wow.
Um, and then, I thought that we had already kind of, made it and we're safe and like we just started a new life.
Right.
And then when 9/11 happened, I think it triggered that again,
Yeah.
you know?
So what did your dad think about you joining?
Yeah, so I'm the first of three girls, right?
Wow.
And I know. And then on top of that, like, like Latin families are very
Yeah.
strict
The
and
same with Asian too.
exactly. It's like women should be, like let me teach you how to make rice because you have to be a good wife kind of thing. So at first they didn't want me to.
Mm.
Um my dad was kind of like, well, if this is what you want to try to do, I guess we'll support you. My mom was completely like, no, she was crying. Like I remember the day I had to go down to MEP to get my physical done.
Hmm.
She literally left work bawling her eyes out, and she's like, they're gonna send you to war. She made me change my contract. Well, not maybe, but I changed my contract from active duty to reservist for her.
Okay.
So it was a hard time for them, I think.
So you said when from '02 to 2011 or 12?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So almost 10 years. Uh
No
what
idea about.
what finally what finally led you to decide to separate from the Marine Corps?
So at the time, I was a single mom. My daughter was 5.
Mm.
She was getting ready to enter kindergarten. And I had already been told that I was in rotation to get sent to Afghanistan. But it just so happened that I was at that crossroads of I had to renew my contract. So they were like, hey, as soon as you're renewing, like you're going over there. And I was fine, but being a single mom, like I've always had open lines of communication with my kid. So I sat down with her and I talked to her and I was like, hey, what do you think about mommy staying in the Marines? And she's like, oh, but they'll send you away. And I was like, yeah, but I go away and I come back and, you say we're grandparents and it's all good. And then she got quiet and then she looks at me and then she's like, what if you get killed?
Wow.
When my 5-year-old said that to me, I was like, that's it. I'm out,
Yeah.
Can't do that to her, especially being a single parent.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I got, we're talking offline. I got two girls. It's still very young, but I can't imagine how I would react if I had my daughter say that to me.
Yeah, it's very sobering. It's like
Yeah.
it really gave me chills. I was like she caught me off guard, and I was like, I can't put her through this, So
Yeah. Okay. So you got out 2011. What was your plans? Like, how was your transition? Talk to our audience a little bit about that for you.
um, I think for me it was a little bit of a smooth transition at first because I jumped into I was a fitness instructor when I got out of the Marine Corps. So I used to teach like Zumba, like kickboxing, belly dance, all like group exercise classes. And so like I was always high on like endorphins from working out.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of like I went from one group of people that really accept you to like another group, like most people that work out are happy, most of the time. So it was a good transition. It was a good welcome. So I really didn't feel it that much then. It wasn't until I had my twins in 2013 that I went from teaching like 18 classes a week to like being on bed rest, because at 6 months the doctor was like, you can't keep jumping or they're gonna fall out. So that was it. They put me on bed rest and then the kids were born, and then like my life just kind of flipped, from like day and night. And I think that's when it caught up to me, you know. um I had I battled with postpartum depression, but it was undiagnosed.
Mm.
So like Marines, they just make you like keep your head low and just keep going. um and I think I held myself to that standard too because I didn't ask for help.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So what at this time were you with your family around, or like how were you able to overcome, all that?
yeah, I think it was like kind of a combination of a perfect storm. I ended up moving to New York. um you know so my family was here, I was there. My husband at the time worked all day because I ended up having to stay home with the kids. So I was like home alone with 3 kids. No real help. Not being able to work out, something that always made me happy and stuff
Right.
like that. So it was just kind of like an avalanche snowball effect.
What going through all that postpartum depression, and like what kind of eventually led you overcome that challenge?
Um, so my kids started preschool really early because they had a speech delay. So they send them to school, to help them with that. So they went to school when they were 3 years old, and I had all this extra time on my hands. And around the same time, one of my corporals that we served together, he became part of the 22.
Mm.
And like I had spoken to him the week before, and he never gave me like he never now none of us knew. He never gave us a clue. Like he never said, hey, I'm feeling like this or I need help or anything, right? So it really came as a shock. And I think it made me realize that we weren't doing enough. I mean, we kind of like robotically say like, I got your six, like count on me, but we really don't actively do it. And so since I had all this time in my hands, I went back to school for art therapy because I've always been an artist.
Hmm.
And I know that like art for me is a processing thing. It helps me like, you
It's
know,
therapeutic for you.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like for me, I know I understand it. Like instinctively, I've always done that. I just wanted to understand the psychology behind it and how and the process of it. So I think that's kind of what gave me the motivation to kind of pull myself out of that rut. And, you know, his death gave me purpose, you know?
So, during that event, losing somebody through suicide, becoming one of the 22, is that how you kind of eventually created this nonprofit, the Claymore Vets?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what started me on the art therapy
Okay.
path. But then ceramics 101 was a requirement for my degree. And, you know, I walked into the studio, and I've been painting since I was like maybe 10. You know, I've been a painter all my life. I hadn't really worked with ceramics, but I walked into the studio, and I was like, I fell in love with it. I'm like, what is this? You know, it just had me. And then what really, really brought it for me was for my senior thesis, I wrote about the therapeutic benefits of working with clay with veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder, right? And as a side component to this, I did a solo exhibition of my life, like a biographical exhibition in 12 sculptures of events that shaped me from even from Peru all the way up to right now. And this exhibit took me about 6 months to complete the whole thing. And I think that was when I personally understood like how you're able to sit within yourself and start really like pulling apart your layers. Because I think we were trained, or I don't know, I mean, even just as an immigrant family, you're trained to operate always from a survival mode, right? Like you're not,
Sure.
you don't sit in with your feelings. You kind of like shove them into the back, and it's like, no, you can't do that, you know? We don't have time for this kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, you just
And
continue to
so
move forward. Like it doesn't matter obstacles or what. There's no time.
exactly,
There's just no time to kind of just sit, like you said, just sit with your emotions and think about
right,
process things.
exactly. And then it just becomes this, like, it's like piles and piles and piles until, you know, one time it overflows. And I think that's what happened to me. Like, I think um the catalyst for me was my friend's death. And then it led me to like have an introspective, you know, like journey.
Mhm.
um but the interesting part for me was that working with clay, you know, it would put me in like in a flow mode, like in a meditation. I can't sit and like meditate for like 10, I can't do that. My brain would just go everywhere, right? But I could sit and sculpt for 10 hours and I'm fine, right? So because my hands and my senses were occupied with working with the clay, I could really have a conversation within myself, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
As I'm creating these sculptures, I started going back to the events, right? Like me becoming an immigrant here and like losing my identity. I didn't speak English. Like I was able to really process all of these things. And that's when it clicked for me. I was like, this medium is really good for veterans because it's physically demanding. You know, it doesn't feel emasculating, you know, for most men, because they're like, I'm not painting. It's like, you know, a little brush or whatever, right? But with mud, it's like, you know, it needs force, it needs physicality, um, and it really encompasses all your senses. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
basically what led me to it.
yeah, that's awesome. So how long has the nonprofit, how long have you since you created it, and what are some of the services you guys provide for with the nonprofit?
Huh. So we're very new, actually. We just got incorporated this past summer.
Okay.
We started the legal processes during the pandemic, um, because we were based out of Long Island in New York. You know, I had my professor at the time would let me run the workshops at the university studio. But
Okay.
then the pandemic happened and everything got shut down. And, you know, I ended up moving back to New Jersey. So we're kind of like in a rebuilding process right now. Um, we just recently secured a location where we're going to be able to start having workshops again. But in the meantime, we curate exhibits for veteran artists, because I also feel that veterans are so unique, right? Because we come from so many different backgrounds, you know, and it's not just the generalized veteran story like Hollywood wants to paint us, you know. There's so many different shades and tones to us and backgrounds. And I feel that art is a really good visual language for them to tell their stories. And for me to create a platform for them to share the stories and then have people witness that, it's very important to move the narrative forward, you know, that as veterans we're not explosive, we're not reactive. We were trained to be like that. But in our core, most of us are, you know, creators. Most of us have a spirit of service, you know.
So what would you say, since you mentioned that you all just got started or established legally last year, what's next for the organization?
So next would be for me to find a building just on our own, because right now we're working in the facility of a VFW. So that's going to be my focus moving forward, to be able to have our own location, and still creating exhibits, you know, for veterans around. We hold 2 yearly, one for here in New Jersey. June 12th is Women's Veterans Day. So every June we have a women's veteran exhibit. And then in November, we have a veterans exhibit. And that encompasses all, you know, areas, all branches and stuff.
And so for right now, you all are within the New York, New Jersey area?
Yes, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. But we do a lot of collaborations with different nonprofits.
Okay.
Like tomorrow I'll be going to California to we're joining Vet Art Org project.
Okay.
And we're going to be actually presenting to the NCCA conference of, you know, how veterans use clay for a therapeutic aspect. So we do work with other states, but mainly we're, you know, in New Jersey.
Up north. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Maria, what would you say, you know, since starting and working with clay and arts, and also helping other veterans get into that, right? What's been the most rewarding moment or experience you've had so far?
So my favorite story till this day, it's always been I partnered with it's an organization called Samaritan Village in New York. It's an in-house residence program for veterans who are, you know, addicted to like substances, or they just got released from jail. So it's a 1-year program that you have to commit to. The first part of the year, the first 6 months, they kind of like reset them, you know, help them detox and all of that. And in the next 6 months, they prepare them to get reintegrated into the civilian community. So they do a lot of like classes and resume building and all of that. But also as a mental health aspect of it, they do a lot of community, you know, work or whatever. So they used to get bussed out to the studio that we had in Long Island. And this particular workshop, we were working on the wheels. Have you ever done a wheel, work on a wheel with clay? No. Okay. So it's very demanding. It's hard. Even though the clay is soft, like you have to center yourself. You have to really like contain it, right? But you can't push too hard because you'll squeeze it, but then you can't let it push you because it'll just wobble and go everywhere you want, right? So you really have to focus. You got to center yourself. You got to concentrate on breathing. It's hard. So one of these, he was an Army veteran. He was trying, he got frustrated. He like threw it and he's like, F this, I'm out, right? So he walked out to have a cigarette. And one of my volunteers, she was actually a speech therapy, but she had retired by then. She walked out, grabbed him, talked to him, brought him back. And then she kind of pulled him to the side, and it was just one-on-one, her and him working together. And at the end of the day, he ended up making 3 bowls, right?
Mm.
They were a little wobbly, but they were nice bowls, right? So fast forward, we fired it, we glazed it, everything. They come to pick it up, right? It's like a bowl, like that you buy at the store bowl, right? And I'm like, hey, look what you did, right? Look at this. And he was so proud. And he was like, oh man, now I can have cereal with my daughter on Saturday mornings while we're eating cereal and watching cartoons. He hadn't talked to his family in almost 3 years because of his addiction. Wow. And then he went from being so frustrated, not even wanting to give himself a chance to try it, to something that he was proud of, that he created, and he was looking to reconnect to his family. And that to me exemplifies, that's what Claymore Vets is about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It further solidifies, what you're doing, right? And it's the cause that you guys, the mission that you guys have. So that's awesome. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah. It's like giving them a sense of pride.
Yeah.
Again, because I think we all experience that at some levels when we get out, because when you're in the military, people hold you to a higher standard. So you feel the pride of wearing a uniform. You feel the pride of being addressed as a your rank or whatever. But then when you fall back into the civilian world, it takes a little bit of, your ego gets a little hurt,
Yeah, definitely.
And then, yeah. And finding something to be proud of again, I think it's important to have purpose,
So Maria, what's for anybody that might be interested or would like to look up Claymore Vets, where can they find you all? How can they volunteer or become part of the organization?
So we are Claymore Vets across all social medias, on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. And then our website is claymorevets.org. And then we're starting the YouTube thing. I mean, I do live stuff with the StreamYard, but we don't have videos yet. But you can find us there too. You want to subscribe for future.
be on the lookout for that, for how-to videos on YouTube, things like that. Okay, Maria, before we go to the second segment of the podcast, what's one thing you want our viewers, our listeners, to take away from this episode?
I always tell people not to have the courage to try something new that makes your soul feel alive. And it doesn't have to be art. It could be anything that makes you feel that you're thriving and not surviving,
Thriving and not surviving.
Yeah,
definitely. And then just go out there and try something you haven't done before. I always I wish my girls are still small, but I hope that they're always curious, that they're always wanting to experiment or try different things as far as arts or hobbies and things like that. So I don't know, it's just be more courageous that way.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think for people like us that would have children, I think our kids learn by watching us do, and not so much what we tell them,
Yeah.
So I think it's a good incentive to have, if not so much for yourself, but for the little eyes that are looking up at you,
Definitely. They're always looking.
Yeah, exactly. And they remember too. They were like, no, remember when you said that? I'm like, oh my God.
All right, Maria. So going to the second segment of the podcast, this is what I call the Fast Five. These are the same 5 questions I ask all my guests. Are you ready?
Oh God. Okay.
All right. So first question, what's one hobby you enjoy?
Obviously clay. Besides that, I like making jewelry. I like recycling. Like I like getting stuff from like thrift stores that catches my eye and like recycling them up. So
Okay. Second question, if you had to choose one person, dead or living, to hang out with for one day, who would it be and why?
whoa. Oh my God, that's wow. Okay, I know this is gonna be sounding very cliche, but like Gandhi.
Gandhi?
Yeah. I really lately I've been really trying to tap into like leading with love. And I think that is the most courageous thing you can do, because in this day and age, everybody's so reactive, right?
Yeah.
And then when you're pushing everybody's buttons and your buttons get pushed, your first initial instinct is to fight, right? And even me, like all of us, you just want to fight and protect. And I always think back on how they fought, like they won their freedom with love, right? Like they just sat there and took it. And it's like, to me, it's like, what? How
Yeah.
can you get to that level of, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
that's so true. Like society nowadays, it's just everybody's just so angry. Everybody's just so, it's the opposite of love, opposite of love, right?
exactly.
And then when you do lead with love, it's like it's just
Yeah.
uncommon nowadays. So yeah, that's great point. Um, all right, Maria, next question. Recommend a book for our audience to read.
Oh, easy. The Alchemist.
Oh, I love that book.
Me too. My favorite.
Yeah, it's so easy. It's an easy read too. Like you just read it in
Yep.
one
And it
sitting.
just it changes your life. It really does.
Yeah.
When you really sit in it, you know?
Um, all right, next question. What's your favorite quote and why?
It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener at war.
That's a good one. I haven't heard that before.
And why? Um, because I feel like all of us veterans, like the military does a really good job of tapping into the instinct that we all have to fight and protect, right? Like they train us to be able to flick that flame in 5 seconds, right? But it's so much harder to not let it go off in situations that it doesn't need to, like what we were just talking about. Like for me with Claymore Vets, I want to change the paradigm of how they see us, of being like, when you think of Claymore, what is it? It's a mind that destroys, right? Like towards the enemy,
Yeah.
right? But we're not that reactive. We're not destructive, you know? It takes them 13 weeks to make us into these like war machines. But when you're done, there's no retraining you back. There's no reconnecting your cables. There's no, giving you the, like, it's okay to love, or like genuinely, right? To connect with your family. Like there's still that disconnection, that isolation. Um, and I think once there's, you have to have more courage to connect with people from a vulnerable point than behind the masks that we wear all day, you know?
That's a great. I mean, that's deep right there. There's some deep insight. um, yeah. You're right. Like, there's no retraining. There's no like. It's hard to switch it off sometimes, I guess.
It is.
Yeah. Um. All right. So, where? Last question. Where do you see yourself in a year, 5 years, or even 10 years from now?
Oh man, in a year, we'll definitely be working towards our studio. 5 years, um, I'll be like a famous sculptor. 10 years, I have Claymore Vets in every state.
Definitely. Man, Maria, it's been a blast talking to you. Just getting your insight and view on certain things and just life in general, right? Appreciate the feedback you've given the me and the audience here. Before we go though, where can they follow you and where can they support you?
So ClaymoreVets.org is our website, and we have them Claymore Vets handle on social media. If you just type that, we'll pop up on anything. So
All right, so just make sure you all check out the claymorevets.org. Check out the social media handles, Claymore Vets. Make sure you follow and support. Maria, again, thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll be hearing from you soon.
definitely. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
All right, take care.
Bye.